The Buffalo Bills are heading into week one of the NFL season with a clash that could very well be a preview of a playoff showdown down the line. Facing off against the Baltimore Ravens, this matchup is more than just the opening chapter of the year. It's a test of identity, of schemes, of how far each team has come since last season. And the biggest question swirling around both franchises were the real X factors that could tilt this game one way or the other. For Buffalo, all eyes are on how they handle the sheer physicality and dynamism of the Ravens' offense, especially now that it's had a full year to gel with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in the backfield. That duo alone is a nightmare to defend. One is a former MVP with blazing speed and elite improvisation. The other a punishing workhorse who can bulldoze defenses into submission. This isn't just about stopping the run. It's about managing chaos. Because when you pair that ground game with a revamped receiving core featuring DeAndre Hopkins, Rashad Bateman, and Zay Flowers, plus a deep tight end room, Baltimore becomes multidimensional. Hopkins might not be a volume target anymore, but his presence demands attention. And that's where the danger lies. The Ravens don't need him to dominate statistically. They need him to shift coverage, stretch zones, and force defenders to make split-second decisions. That's how the real damage happens. But it's not just the offense that looks different in Baltimore. Defensively, they've added some critical pieces. The pass rush looks deeper with second-round pick Mike Green generating preseason buzz, and the secondary has been retooled in a major way. Gone are some of the liabilities from last season's unit. No more Brandon Stevens. No more struggling depth guys in critical sub-packages. Instead, they've added experienced veterans like Jair Alexander and Chidobe Awuzie and drafted Malachi Starks to shore up the safety position. You combine that with Nate Wiggins entering year 2 after being thrown into the fire last season, and suddenly this secondary has teeth. Add in the fact that defensive coordinator Zach Orr is now in his second year, a time when schemes tend to tighten and players get more comfortable. And it's easy to see why the Ravens are being discussed as a legitimate contender for the AFC crown. So what does this mean for the Bills? For starters, it means being flexible in week 1 without completely abandoning your identity. That's a tricky balance, and it's where a lot of good teams get burned trying to be too clever or too reactive. You've got to respect Baltimore's uniqueness, their use of heavy personnel, the threat of the QB run, the play-action deep shots. But you can't start inventing a whole new defensive philosophy just for this game. That said, Buffalo has some choices to make when it comes to personnel. A guy like Jordan Phillips might not be an every-down player anymore, but in a game like this with Derrick Henry coming downhill and Lamar threatening the edge, having someone with experience and proven physicality could be the difference in key short yardage downs. Dorian Williams also becomes a fascinating wild card. His range, explosiveness, and physical nature make him an ideal chess piece against 2 or 3 tight end sets, especially if the Ravens try to force mismatches in the second level. Then there's the cornerback conundrum. With Tre'Davious White's health still in question, the Bills have to weigh the importance of coverage against the need for reliable tackling. Because with the Ravens, it's not just about staying in phase with receivers. It's about coming downhill and stopping 5-yard gains from becoming 40-yard bursts. So do you go with a more physical corner who might be a little more vulnerable in coverage, but can reliably support the run? Or do you stick with your top guy and take your chances? That's the kind of week 1 dilemma that can define a season. There's also intrigue on the roster construction front. It's not uncommon for teams to carry specific players for specific matchups. Maybe a 5th defensive tackle like Zion Logue is active over a developmental guy like Dwayne Carter simply because of his edge in early down run defense. Maybe a player like Landon Jackson dresses over Javon Solomon because his length and athleticism are more valuable against Baltimore's unique looks. It's week 1. You only get one shot to start the season on the right foot, and sometimes that means short-term decisions that don't carry over into week 2. The challenge is finding the right mix of players to handle the Ravens' physicality without compromising your depth or special teams. Looking further, the Bills' situation at kicker is an emerging concern. Tyler Bass has missed significant time with what's been described as pelvic soreness, and the front office working out veteran kickers this close to the opener is rarely a good sign. Even when he returned for preseason action, his mechanics looked off, and a missed chip shot from inside 30 yards was more than just rust. It's a confidence issue now, and when you factor in health concerns, suddenly one of the team's steadiest players becomes a big question mark. With the razor-thin margins of today's NFL, a shaky kicker can be the difference between winning and losing. Don't be surprised if the Bills make a late move to shore up that position, not just as insurance, but because there's legitimate worry base won't be at full strength to start the year. The other element fans are talking about is the safety position, and for good reason. In Sean McDermott's defense, the safeties are the engine behind the disguise-heavy schemes. Buffalo loves to show two high shells and then rotate at the snap. That pre-snap picture is rarely what the quarterback sees post-snap, and it puts a lot of pressure on the safeties to move with precision and discipline. The Bills lean heavily on their safeties not just for coverage, but to support the run from depth. They have to be able to read, trigger, and arrive under control to make tackles in space. And if they're off by half a second, it can turn into a house call. That's why interchangeability is so important. You need both guys to be able to drop deep, play the alley, cover tight ends, and blitz when needed. And when it's not right, when just one piece is out of place, the entire defense can fall apart. That's also why there's so much attention on how the young defenders like Maxwell Hairston and Deion Walker are developing. Take Deion Walker, for example. There was plenty of skepticism when he was drafted, a guy with questionable anchor and some inconsistent tape from college. But so far, he's flashed the kind of quickness, upper body strength, and motor that coaches dream about. And when you consider that he was playing 50-plus snaps a game in college, something he won't be asked to do in the NFL, it opens up the possibility that a limited, focused role could help him thrive. But that's preseason. Now, he's got to show it against real starters in real games. The potential is there, but potential doesn't win games in September. Same with Hairston. He's had flashes of strong play in camp, but he's still acclimating. And while fans want to draw parallels to former first-rounders like Kyer Elam, the truth is these are very different players. Different body types, different instincts, different development arcs. And if we're talking about what this matchup will reveal, then we also need to dive into one of the more subtle but critical questions facing this Bills team heading into the season. How do they balance being adaptive with being consistent? There's a temptation, especially in the early part of the season, to react to opponents more than to focus inward. Coaches want to show they're ready for anything, that they can game plan around specific threats, but the truth is, when you start chasing other teams' tendencies instead of sharpening your own identity, you run into problems. This Buffalo team cannot afford to lose sight of what makes them good just because they're playing a physical juggernaut like Baltimore. Yes, the Ravens are unique, and yes, they will stress your rules as a defense. But the moment you start breaking your own structure to accommodate one opponent, you start a domino effect that's hard to stop. This is especially true when it comes to the Bills' defense under the new leadership dynamic that includes Ryan Nielsen, who joins as a defensive consultant with a lot of buzz and some concerns. His previous stop with Jacksonville didn't exactly go according to plan. The Jaguars finished near the bottom of the league in almost every defensive category, from total yards allowed to takeaways to third down efficiency. On paper, that's a red flag, but dig deeper and you find context. Injuries gutted that Jaguars defense. The front office made a series of strange personnel decisions, and overall, the team played disjointed football in all three phases. So while Nielsen didn't cover himself in glory, it wasn't exactly a fair representation of his coaching acumen. What matters now is how he fits into this defensive brain trust in Buffalo, a group that already includes Sean McDermott, Bobby Babich, and Al Holcomb. The challenge is synthesis. Can all these minds come together to produce a defense that remains disciplined in its zone principles, that disguises coverages without being late to rotate, and that sends pressure creatively without leaving gaping holes behind it? That's what we're about to find out, and there might be no better early test than facing Lamar Jackson. Because if your safeties are slow to rotate, if your linebackers overrun gaps, if your defensive ends crash too hard without containing the edge, he'll make you pay instantly. This isn't a quarterback you can bluff your way through. He sees hesitation, he sees breakdowns, and he turns them into highlight plays. And that brings us back to personnel. We already talked about the DT rotation, but linebacker usage might be just as crucial. A player like Dorian Williams brings a level of explosiveness and range that feels tailor-made to face the Ravens' multiple back, multiple tight end sets. He's not a perfect player yet, still developing in terms of reading keys and taking clean angles, but his upside might be worth a gamble in this kind of matchup. You need players who can recover quickly, who can make up for a half-step mistake with elite movement skills. Williams offers that. And so, the coaching staff has to ask themselves, are we playing the veterans we trust, or are we willing to bet on traits when the margin for error is so small? On the offensive side, the Bills find themselves in a curious position as well. They got weapons. They've got depth. They've got a quarterback in Josh Allen who can tilt the field on any snap. But the question isn't about talent anymore. It's about cohesion and timing. Because if Baltimore's pass rush, deeper and more dangerous this year, gets rolling, the rhythm of Buffalo's offense will be tested. It's going to take a clean, efficient operation. That means Josh Allen making smart decisions, not trying to play hero ball on every snap. It means the offensive line communicating well against simulated pressures and stunts. That brings us to a name that fans have been talking about for weeks now, Curtis Samuel. He's got speed, versatility, and a new opportunity in Buffalo. But one area that sparked debate is why he hasn't been more involved as a returner. On paper, he looks like a fit. Shifty, fast, good vision. But his career tells a different story. He hasn't returned a punt since 2016. Not in college, not in the pros. And when you look at those limited reps, the results weren't great. A few fair catches, a couple short returns, even a muff punt. Special teams coordinators at multiple levels have all passed on using him as a returner, which suggests there's something in practice that doesn't translate to game day effectiveness. Maybe it's ball security. Maybe it's instincts. But the role just hasn't materialized for him. Then there's the issue of inactives. Every team has to designate a handful of players who won't dress. And week one always brings intrigue because it's the first real glimpse at how a coaching staff values different players. Are they thinking long-term development, immediate impact, special teams reliability? All of it matters. A guy like Elijah Moore might not dress if Khalil Shakir is fully healthy, simply because the slot snaps will be accounted for in other roles, like gunner or kick coverage, might carry more weight in that fifth or sixth receiver spot. Similarly, we could see a surprise on the defensive line, with someone like Javon Solomon possibly inactive in favor of Landon Jackson, who brings more length and better size matchups for Baltimore's run-heavy game plan. This week one game isn't just about getting to 1-0. It's about setting the tone for the season, and that includes leadership, communication, and how this team responds to adversity. Because Baltimore is going to throw punches. There will be bad drives. There might even be turnovers or blown coverages. But how the Bills react to those moments, that's where we'll learn who they are. Will they stay composed? Will the sideline stay connected? Will the adjustments come fast and clearly? The vibe around Buffalo is optimistic but guarded. There's a sense that this is still a very good football team, a contender with experience, depth, and one of the game's elite quarterbacks. But there's also a sense that this season has to be different. The goal can't just be another playoff berth. It can't be more regular season wins. The goal is to finally finish the job. And that's why games like this, early season matchups against teams like Baltimore, matter more than just what the standings say. They reveal the cracks. They show whether your off-season work actually translated into a better product. And they set the stage for whether this version of the Bills is finally the one that gets over the hump. So when the lights come on in week one, it won't just be about the scoreboard. It'll be about the energy, the details, the matchups, the ability to stay disciplined when Lamar Jackson starts dancing in the backfield, when Derrick Henry lowers his shoulder, when Zay Flowers turns a simple slant into a 40-yard gain. And on the other side, it'll be about Josh Allen protecting the football, about the offensive line holding up just long enough for plays to develop, about the coaching staff staying aggressive but not reckless. These are the margins. And this is where championships start. Before we dive back in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest Buffalo Bills updates straight to your screen. And hey, don't hold back. Let us know your thoughts on today's news down in the comments. Whispers have begun to sweep through the NFL like wildfire following the sensational announcement that Aaron Donald, the defensive juggernaut widely regarded as one of the most dominant players of his generation, has officially signed with the Buffalo Bills. The news has sent shockwaves through the league, with insiders speculating endlessly about the seismic shift this could cause for the Bills' defense and the broader dynamics of the AFC. Donald's reputation as a relentless, nearly unstoppable force on the defensive line precedes him, and fans are already conjuring visions of quarterbacks being chased mercilessly from one end of the field to the other. Buffalo, a team that has flirted with greatness but often fallen short in critical moments, now possesses a true game-changer whose mere presence can alter both offensive schemes and opposing coaches' strategies. Rumors suggest that Donald's move was motivated not only by the team's competitive ambitions, but also by the opportunity to pair his unmatched defensive prowess with a roster that is hungry for a championship breakthrough. In locker rooms across the league, whispers are circulating about how quarterbacks may now have to rethink their game plans entirely, with defensive coordinators envisioning blitz packages and stunts designed to maximize Donald's unique skill set. Analysts are debating endlessly whether this signing signals a shift in Buffalo's identity, from a solid contender to a legitimate force that could dominate defensively for years to come. The excitement surrounding Donald's signing is almost tangible in Buffalo, where fans are already envisioning a defense that can terrorize opposing offenses and fundamentally change the narrative around the team. Local insiders hint at behind-the-scenes discussions about how Donald's presence will allow the Bills to be more aggressive with their defensive schemes, daring to send additional pass rushers while relying on his ability to collapse pockets single-handedly. The buzz is compounded by speculations that the Bills' coaching staff may have spent months strategizing how to integrate Donald's skill set into an already formidable defensive line, envisioning a domino effect where one quarterback hit triggers a cascade of turnovers and game-changing plays. Sports radio shows are ablaze with hot takes, as pundits imagine the psychological impact Donald will have on opposing quarterbacks even before the ball is snapped. Fans, too, are taking to social media with feverish predictions, suggesting that the mere threat of Donald could reshape the entire AFC playoff landscape. Rumors have even surfaced about potential mentorship roles he could assume with younger defensive players, further magnifying his influence beyond the field. While contracts and signing bonuses are often the headline, this move is stirring conversations about identity, culture, and the kind of intimidating aura Donald brings with him, making the Bills a team that now commands fear and respect in equal measure. Beyond the immediate tactical implications, Donald's arrival in Buffalo is fueling speculation about the ripple effects across the entire league, particularly among teams that previously relied on passing games to secure victories against top-tier defenses. Sources close to the situation suggest that quarterbacks who once felt comfortable reading defenses may now experience heightened anxiety, as the mere mention of Donald's name could alter their rhythm and decision-making. Rumors abound that opposing offensive coordinators are already huddling in emergency meetings to develop countermeasures, from quick-release passes to innovative blocking schemes designed to mitigate his impact. Analysts have begun theorizing about a domino effect, where Donald's presence may indirectly elevate the performance of other defensive players, as the focus and attention he commands could create mismatches and open lanes for teammates to exploit. Fans, meanwhile, are speculating on Twitter and forums about how this acquisition may translate into playoff dominance, with some envisioning Buffalo as an unstoppable juggernaut capable of marching deep into the postseason with renewed confidence. The discussion extends beyond individual games, with whispers that the Bills' new identity could attract free agents who want to join a team led by a player of Donald's caliber. Even rival teams are reportedly adjusting long-term strategies, recognizing that a player of his talent can influence roster decisions, draft priorities, and coaching philosophies in ways that go far beyond the gridiron. Amid the growing chatter, attention is also turning to Donald himself and how he envisions his role within the Bills' defensive machine, with insiders suggesting that his competitive fire has been stoked by the idea of hunting quarterbacks relentlessly. Rumors hint that Donald has been vocal about wanting to reshape the narrative around Buffalo's defense, transforming it from a unit with potential into a relentless, feared force. Sources close to the player claim he has been actively studying opposing quarterbacks' tendencies, envisioning scenarios where he can exploit weaknesses while mentoring younger teammates to elevate their awareness and execution. Analysts are speculating that his approach could be highly psychological, as he not only pressures quarterbacks physically, but also creates mental stress that can lead to critical mistakes. Local media outlets are reporting that Donald has already begun informal meetings with coaches to discuss alignment, blitz timing, and situational strategies, suggesting that he is committed to immediate impact rather than waiting for the team to adjust around him. Fans have taken these discussions as confirmation that the Bills are entering a new era, one where defensive dominance can be paired with offensive consistency to create a truly balanced contender. Social media has erupted with conjecture, with fans imagining highlight reels filled with sacks, forced fumbles, and quarterbacks fleeing in panic, while commentators debate the intangible effects of fear, anticipation, and intimidation that Donald naturally brings. There are whispers about potential ripple effects in contract negotiations and player acquisitions, as teams consider how to counteract Buffalo's newfound defensive might or attract players who want to challenge themselves against an opponent of this caliber. In this climate of constant speculation, every practice, press conference, and pre-game interview becomes a source of rumor and interpretation, fueling a narrative that grows more elaborate with each passing day. Even casual observers are drawn into the conversation, imagining a league in which one player can change the course of strategy, draft decisions, and competitive expectations across multiple seasons. The excitement is electric, and while nothing has been proven on the field yet, the mere presence of Aaron Donald in Buffalo has become a story that dominates headlines, discussion boards, and fantasy debates alike, with a promise of drama, dominance, and relentless pursuit of quarterbacks that could define an era. That's a wrap for now. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay on top of all things Buffalo Bills, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what you think in the comments. See you in the next update.